Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be doing another LeetCode question. This one is 771, joules and stones. So the idea behind this question here is we've got a function and we're getting in two parameters. We're getting in j and we're getting in s, and j is going to represent the joules and s is going to represent the stones. So the joules is what we are actually looking for. The joules are valuable, and then the stones is everything that we have. So for example, we have a bunch of stones, and some of these may be joules and others just maybe regular stones, and we have to go and find out how many joules we have in our collection of stones. So to start off with, we could loop through each stone, and for each stone we could then go and check to see is it a joule, but the problem with that is it's not very time efficient, because in the worst case scenario it would be n squared. So we're actually going to use a hash map to improve our time complexity. That's going to mean we're going to have to use up a little bit more space because we're going to use a hash map, but it will result in a better overall solution. So to start off with, we can go and create our hash map. So we can do this by saying let, and we'll say joules. We can call this joules map, and we're going to set this equal to a new map. So in JavaScript we can do that by just saying new map with our brackets, and we also want a counter to keep count of how many joules that we have within our stones. So let's go and create just a normal integer variable for this. So we'll say let, and we'll call it joule counter. Obviously we want to start off by setting our joule counter to 0, and now this is where we actually want to first of all go and populate our joule map. So to do this we'll have to go and loop through each joule and add this to our hash map so that we can use it to look up when we loop through all of our different stones. So to do this in JavaScript it's a little bit funny, because if you notice, if you read this description, it's actually been passed in as a string. So for us to loop through a string in JavaScript we could use a traditional for loop, but for this I'm going to use one of the built-in methods in JavaScript called for each, but for each is only available on arrays. So I'm going to do a little bit of casting. So I'm going to just convert my string that we're getting in here as j and s. I'm going to convert that into an array, and then I'm going to loop through that array using the for each statement. So it might make a little bit more sense if I just type it out. So j is our parameter, and I want to go and split it, or I want to go and convert it into array. So I'm going to say dot split, and I want to split it on no particular character. So when I use my quotes I'm just going to leave it blank, and then now I can use my for each statement. Now once I've got my for each statement I'm going to take in a parameter. So you can call it whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it j because it's short for joule. And now once I've got my j, I'm going to go and use an ES6 arrow function because it just will make this a little bit cleaner. So within this we want to go and add j. So j in this example will be each of the joules that's been passed in, each of the different possible joules. So we want to add this to the joules map. So it's a joules. So our joules map has a method called set. So we're going to set the joule so that we can look it up in our quick lookup table in the future. So this hash map takes a key and value pair. So we're going to set our key to our joule. So we just say j here, and then it doesn't actually matter what we set our value to, but I'm just going to set it to a boolean called true. And I think that's it for us looping through our joules. Now we want to go and loop through all of our stones so that we can go and see how many of our stones are actually joules. So it's going to actually be something quite similar to this. We're going to start off with s.split, and we're going to split it on nothing, so it'll be empty quotes, and we're going to perform a for each statement. So I'm just going to take this and copy it and bring it down to the next line, and we're just going to change j to s because that's what we're going to be looping through. And now we're going to get our callback function. Again, we're going to use JavaScript ES6 syntax for this. So instead of calling it j, we're going to call it s, and pass in s with our arrow function, and then our opening and closing brackets. And now we don't want to actually set any value to our joules map. We want to call a different method on joules map. So the method that we're going to call is going to be called has. So it's going to be joules map dot has, and what we want to check for is s in this case. And if this is true, we want to go and add 1 to our counter, which we will return. So we'll have to wrap this in an if statement. So we'll say if, put in a closing round bracket there, open up our curly brackets, and now inside here is where we're going to increment our joule counter. So I'm just going to grab this, and I'm going to say joule counter plus plus, and now what will happen is we're going to loop through all of our stones, and if our stone is also a joule, we're going to add 1 to our joule counter, and at the very end of this we want to return. So we're going to return joule counter. So this should work now if I go and run this. I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit. So if I go and run this code here, we can see, yeah, it works. So if we just go and submit this, we'll run through another couple of test cases, and you can see with this solution here that we've got, it's faster than 94% of the other solutions that have been submitted. So that's because we're using a hash map, which is really efficient and really fast for lookups. As you can see down here, we're not as good with our memory usage, and again, that's because we're using a hash map, but it's by design that we're not going to have really efficient memory usage if we want our runtime to be really fast. So the runtime for this application would be n, and n would be the size of the stones, because we are assuming that the stones are always going to be greater than the amount of joules. But if it was a case that there was many different joules and we only had a couple of stones, then the big O would be big O of j. I hope you found the video useful. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, drop them down below and I'll answer them. Have a good day.